Hello and welcome to On the Kerbs. I'm your host, Team Hours Daily. Joining me this week is racing driver and commentator Alex Brundle. We caught up recently to chat about Formula 2 and Formula 3, classic car racing, Tinder profiles, and plenty more. So without any more further ado, let's get straight into it, and I hope you enjoy our conversation. Hi Alex, thanks for being here today. First of all, how are you?
Good, thank you. Yeah, I just came straight off the back of virtual Le Mans 24 hours, which was good fun. So a couple of days in Paris doing that. Studio Gabrielle, just kind of near. It's really near. Yeah, exactly. Well, near the FIA building, which is a really cool building. Actually, there's kind of a lot going on down there. Yeah. We were staying kind of a brief walk away, which is really nice. Now I'm back in the smoke, just packing up, getting ready to do a 3 or 4 day training camp with Indy Europol competition in Poland. So packing all my jackets.
Non-stop.
Packing all my jackets. So
Poland in January, definitely pack all of those, I reckon.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it's just, this is very January stuff, you know, a lot of kind of talking about racing, a lot of getting prepared for the new year and
telling we've got to do something in the off season, you know, got to do something.
Yeah, exactly. Telling everyone how much we're going to win by, and then reality hits at the first test in March, you know. So
you've got to have that optimistic attitude, though, haven't you?
Sorry, say again.
You've got to have the optimistic attitude, though.
Yeah, exactly. Optimistic attitude at this stage, and you know, everybody's put all of their ducks in a row. You know, especially in World Endurance Championship terms. So we're all getting ourselves kind of sorted out and nailed down. Seats get made and plans get made, and then you know, you throw it all out on the racetrack and see what you've got.
Mm-hmm. I mean, throwing it back probably quite a bit then here, but what first got you into motorsport?
First got me into motorsport. I mean, obviously, Dad was a big factor in it. It's an always wanted to story rather than a specific moment where I thought I really want to do that. It just seemed like the obvious direction for me. And although various people have different temperaments, and then there'll be somebody in your audience who'll go, "No, I wouldn't." I believe that anybody who has the opportunity to drive racing cars for a living will probably pursue it.
I'd probably have to agree.
Yeah. And so, you know, I did have that opportunity, and so I pursued it, basically, to the point where kind of I, you know, would want to go karting over and over and over again. Just, you know,
so rental cars. Once you get that first taste of it, it's hard to stop doing that if you've got the chance for it.
Yeah, well, honestly, the moment I really fell in love with motorsport was long after I started karting. So I started karting, and it felt like the obvious direction to take, but I don't think I really loved racing until I was on autopilot until I first drove a car on a racetrack, on a big car racetrack. You know, because when you first go to drive a car on a racetrack after doing some years of karting, everything just feels huge. Like it just feels massive.
So you already feel like you've made it to the big leagues in a way.
Yeah. And so, you know, there was this sort of adrenaline to it of you know, the driving a car, and there was so much complexity to it. And I did a day when I was a youngster, you know, sat next to an instructor on my first day in a racing car, you know, to learning how to do it, full H pattern clutches, everything like that. And it was just, that was exhilarating. That I loved about it. And it's what I've always loved about it. And so that was the moment. I was about 14. And that was the moment where I was like, okay, this is far from being just my prescribed path. This is what I'm driving the program now. You know,
yeah,
I want to.
And then, I mean, on the other side of that, you've been doing for the last few years good bit of commentary, and you've been commenting on both F2 and F3 with Alex Jacques, and you two are basically the dynamic duo of commenting for that. How much do you enjoy that side of things?
I do enjoy that stuff, and I always enjoy it when I get there. It's one of those things that I really fell into because people just kept on asking me to do it, and I couldn't find a reason why not. which was really nice. Which is really nice. I originally, the first commentary I ever did was for Radio Le Mans. Was actually on endurance racing for Radio Le Mans, and that was a fair time ago. That must have been back in sort of 2013, 2012. A similar time, Will Buxton asked me to join him on feeder series commentary. That was a year after I did GP3. Then I couldn't make. I did a couple in a row and it was all going fine. And then I couldn't make one because I had a works test with Bentley. And I let them down at the last minute and they were pretty grumpy. They hit it really well, but I think they were pretty grumpy.
Yeah. But also you can kind of understand from your point of view why you weren't going to make it for that one.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, yeah. But it was like, I think that they then sensed that I was still very much focused on my racing and that I was not going to be able to give them, you know, a full season of comms.
Yeah. So if you're going to do something, you want to be able to do it properly and be able to commit to it. So
yeah. So then I boomeranged back around to it about 6 years later when I ran into the same guy who hired me originally to do it at an event where I was speaking at the RAC club, again about endurance racing, before we did the Le Mans 24 Hours with me and Mike Conway on stage. And, you know, a bit of a prod and a bit of a poke. And do you remember when you used to do commentary and this funny stuff and that funny stuff and in jokes and so on and so forth? And then, you know, invited me back to do some more. The Indy 500 was the first one, which went out, which was produced elsewhere, but it went out on Sky Sports. And then that way,
then really
well, exactly. We were only doing the breaks though. So NBC would do all of the main comms, and then we would jump in. So I had to properly research it and find out about it because I'd never done any oval racing at all. You know, ring up some friends and all of that kind of thing, and figure out what it was all about and how the weight jackers worked and everything like that. So did that, and then jumped kind of back into feeder series comms, which was really weird. And here I am, you know, it's 2 years of it in a row. Both years have been very, very different, but both years have been with Alex Jacques. Although, you know, we're not even in the same place now when we call those races. And so
I think that's such a good testament to it, though, because it sounds like you're next to each other with how seamless it sounds, at least from what I've heard and what other people have said. So you must be doing something right.
Well, it's a technological masterpiece, honestly, the way they connect them together, because, you know, they make sure. I mean, he'll be sitting in Saudi Arabia, right, and I'm hearing him on a, you know, 0.5 of a second delay. It's just nothing. Yeah, you know, bearing in mind that if somebody went to slap you, the fastest you could react is 0.3. Yeah. So,
and chances are you're not going to react that quickly.
Well, exactly. You know, so nothing. And you know, there were a couple of weekends through the year where I would receive the pictures first, slightly before him, because they would go to me and then out to him, bizarrely enough, because they cut where I am in Biggin Hill, and then they go back out to him, which gives me a bit of a jump on the action. So I'll be like, that's the only thing I think a couple of people have heard, is me going, oh, and then him trying to work out what's going to happen. And he goes, oh, you know. Exactly. But you know, he's such a disciplined commentator and such a pro, and I've just always been kind of led by him. The technology is so great that basically it makes my job much easier than it otherwise be on that one.
I'm going to say, as we're talking F2, F3 second, any predictions for the 22 season for either one of them? If you can, considering how hard it is to predict those anyway.
Yeah, I mean, you can never count out Prema, and I'm looking forward to see how Hauger gets on, because Oscar Piastri has really changed the game back to how it used to be, where you could jump in a GP2 car on a rock hard tire they used to have with a big power, but you were still expected to perform, like Lewis did, like Adam Carroll did, those guys. And I think that there's kind of been this acceptance over the past sort of 5 or so seasons that you couldn't do that, right? That you couldn't, because of the Pirelli tire, because of how weird it was, that you couldn't just jump in and do the job. Well, Piastri's just gone, you can.
He didn't get that memo.
Yeah, no. And so Hauger, I mean, you saw him watching from the pit lane as Oscar was racing this year. And I just thought, wow, that guy, what's that guy thinking? Because
so he ran away with it so much in F3 that you're kind of not worried about it, but kind of worried about how far is he going to potentially run away with it in F2.
But I just think it just looked like you saw the bar being set, So that's going to be an interesting one for me. I think Jack Doohan is going to be clearly a driver to watch as well, by how well he did when he jumped in at the end of the year.
Oh yeah, you'd think he'd been there all season.
Yeah, exactly. That was pretty impressive. He really done his preparation quite clearly, but it just gelled, didn't it, straight away. In terms of F3, we'll get another tranche of youngsters in coming from all over motorsport, and it's always hard to predict. There'll be somebody who comes out on top. Well, what endlessly impresses me is how Prema just keep delivering.
What insider knowledge do they have that they're able to pick all these drivers that are just so good?
Yeah, well, the drivers, but also from having been in those series, making the little cars work is involved. And I jumped when I was back in feeder series. It was a bit of a different car, but it was the old GP3 car with the 4-cylinder engine. And I jumped between the Carlin and the ART, and the ART was really the dominant car at that time. And you didn't do anything different. You just turned up at the front, and so it's like some of those teams managed to nail the cars right down. And that's the important thing. And I think Prema just do that year after year after year, which is impressive.
Okay, they seem to be the Mercedes of the feeder series at the moment, definitely.
Yeah, but equally, I don't think they spend more money than anyone else.
No.
Which is what's impressive about it. So it's not like they've checkbooked their way to the front, I don't perceive. No. It's just, the resource being well spent and well delivered.
And so very much doing the best they can with what they've got scenario and somehow nailing it consistently.
Well, there's only so much you can really, they're limited on what they can do. You can't throw these cars in a wind tunnel, you're not allowed. So, there are a lot of tools you can use, shaker rigs and a bit of CFD and so on and so forth. But yeah, I think it gets to a point where it's like you've got the numbers and you've got to make what you can of the car, and then actually those spec cars can be more complex to engineer, even because what you've got to start doing then is thinking outside the box. Getting rid of rolling resistance, getting rid of gathering a bit more downforce by shimming the fitment of the parts and so on and so forth. So it starts to become incredibly complex engineering, and that's what they're doing.
I mean, going back to your racing then, what are your racing plans for 2022?
So I'm signed for 2 years in the World Endurance Championship in an LMP2 car with Indy Europol competition.
Yep.
Who were really? It's funny, you know, when I first said to people that I was signed for them, the general consensus was like, who? And then actually now they've spent a bit more time in the World Endurance Championship. We were fifth in the championship last year. We were fifth at Le Mans.
Not too shabby.
Yeah, exactly. It's exactly that. It's not too shabby. I mean, it's not amazing, but it's not too shabby. So now I feel like people recognize them as a team, and they also have kind of gained a bit of confidence in themselves as well as a team who can deliver at the front of the championship.
Exactly what you want.
And I just think that, you know, I've got 2 years now to turn them from a team you know, the team where people didn't know exactly who they were.
Not quite zero to hero, but not bad either.
I mean, it's not fair to say, I guess, because they've done a lot of prototype racing before, and when I arrived there, they were a very proficient team, and all the potential was there. But I think working with them and continuing to improve until we're winning races together, it's got to be the aim. And I think that, you know, shows something about yourself that you can go and try to sort of do that. I mean, anybody can throw themselves in the best car with the best two teammates and fund it all and try and win. But, you know,
so you get the level of satisfaction if you're there grinding away behind the scenes and you manage to help build them up as well whilst you're there.
Well, that option is not available to me. So I sat at home thinking, how do I stand out here? You know, how do I stand out? You as a sports car driver, you're supposed to be delivering a service to the team. You're supposed to be moving a team forward. You're supposed to be, you know, doing all of those kind of things. Well, if you're being basically bought out of the best seat, then the only way you can do that is by getting a seat and turning it into the best seat using using your experience in the category and your knowledge and nous and a bit of work. So that was the aim, was basically, you know, DIY it and hopefully see a team that have resource and potential but need experience and speed, and then add yourself to that and hopefully find that right balance of everything, and hope for the best a little bit in some ways as well. Yeah, exactly that. So that was the aim.
Then I'm intrigued. Would you be able to share your opinion on the whole steward situation across not just F1 but F2 and F3 as well? Because I mean, last year in particular, I think more in F3 than F2, I think, but it was just a bit roller coaster, maybe is the nice way to put it. But what do you think about that whole situation?
My view is that I don't believe that the team should be able to talk to the stewards at all. That should be a one-way communication for me. You know, I've operated in series, most notably the World Endurance Championship, where teams communications, you know, and it's racing on track in the same way, you know, the same arguments about safety could be made. And you can propose something to the race director, but the race director is under no obligation, you know, is one step removed from you. Firstly, they have an assistant to whom you talk. And there's that distance, you know, and I think that in Formula One, there needs to be that distance, you know, the race director is the referee. And is not.
It shouldn't be negotiable.
Is not accountable to the teams. The race director is accountable to the FIA. The race director, you know, who are setting the rules, and it's a pretty simple, you know, cut and paste job. If you take the rules and you augment them and change them, in my perspective, that's not acting appropriately as the race director. But equally, you know, if the race director is pressurized through a system of communication which, in my view, shouldn't exist, then that perhaps needs to be addressed first in order to give him the environment to appropriately undertake his role, which is to evenly and blindly, in many ways,
I mean, like you say, they're the referee of it, and it'd be like you see a little bit of pushback, say in football example, but you don't see them decide reversing a decision after a match is finished or anything, or adding something there. It's just kind of it's the referee deciding there and then, and everyone's just got to deal with it and move on and deal with it immediately and do the best they can with what they've been given. So it's not a negotiation. I
mean, school football refs are told, because I've seen them trained for a bizarre sequence of circumstances. School football referees are told, if you make a decision, even if you make the wrong decision and you later recognize it to be the wrong decision, you never undermine your authority by disagreeing with your own decision later, because it's the nature of authority.
That can start then, and then it snowballs from there.
Exactly. It's the nature of authority. Somebody has to make a call, and then the call has to stand. And even if it's the wrong call, you got to stand on. You got to stand on as the official, right?
So you can, yourself, you can maybe try and correct it next time, but as long as you know that, and not everyone else needs to be aware of that, maybe.
Yeah, I think there's a danger in that as well, because I think there's a danger in trying to have a mental bank balance of decisions which have been given, and then what you actually end up there with are two wrong decisions rather than an end, because every decision, as we saw in the final race in Abu Dhabi, every decision that you take has a knock-on effect on all competitors. So including those fighting for other championship positions and so on and so forth that didn't get let through and might have had the opportunity to race, etc. So it's like anybody who says, who'll give you a good athletic diet plan will say, if you fall off the horse and eat something you're not supposed to eat or do it, don't try and correct it the next day. Just go back to zero, hit your numbers. And I think that as well, is quite important. But yeah, for me, I believe that the communique between the teams and the race director is just a one-way communication.
Yeah.
In the future.
Fingers crossed, something we can get more clarity on that one at least this year and try and sort that one out.
Yeah.
Do you have then a fun racing related story that you can share?
Oh God, yes. So many. Well, yeah, definitely. I mean, there have been a couple of frightening races I've been involved with. There have been a couple of funny races I've been involved with. I took the lead of Le Mans without knowing it once. That was reasonably amusing.
Did you find out when you were still in first place, or did you find out after the whole thing was finished?
No, I found out when I was in first. I found out when it was the 2013 24 Hours of Le Mans. Okay. And we were racing our teammates for the lead. And I circulating, horrible spray, zooming past cars left, right, and center, cars off, cars in the wall, cars everywhere, weaving behind. We'd just been one safety car behind the leader, and as you know, at Le Mans there are three safety cars, and they split the field.
Yeah.
So if you can get to the same safety car as the leader, of course, that's massively beneficial because it prevents you losing that 45 seconds or so, which is so hard to make back. So I breathlessly come over to my engineer, Thierry Bouvet, who's now the technical director of the World Endurance Championship, funnily enough. And I said to him, Thierry, did we make the same safety car as the leader? And Sam used on the radio, and he goes, well, in a way, Alex, yes, you did make the safety car as a leader, because you are, in fact, the leader of the race. So I'd actually, bearing in mind our cars were bright pink and black, I'd actually parked.
Somehow you still missed that.
I passed my teammate Martin Plowman in the gloom somewhere, and I hadn't even noticed. It was it was so much spray.
Such a
Only one
you didn't even notice it.
Only one I've had worse than that was in Fuji, 2016, I believe. Yeah, no, 2017 with DC Racing, where there was a light, the red light at the end of the pit lane was the only thing you could see on the entire pit straight. So I would basically, you go flat out down a long, Fuji Speedway, long pit straight, and there's that hairpin at the end, and I'm, crapping myself basically about just keeping going. They'd run that weird. Do you remember that track safari they used to do with the buses?
Oh yeah.
So we'd done it in the wet the day before, and these sort of buses would come out of the gloom, and it was all like a little bit scary. I did that for DC Racing anyway. So I would drive to the red light at the end of the pit lane, so I knew where I was, because I knew that was about 250 meters from the first corner. I would drive to it and I would brake there. I'm going to stick to it. In a dead straight, it was like drive by numbers. If I knew if I went in a dead straight line, I'd make the corner just about, get it stopped and turned. That was probably the only worst one, but some scary old races over the years.
Then, I'm going to say memorable, definitely.
Yeah.
Nothing else.
Yeah, memorable.
I would say you've raced with your dad as well before. How was that, and would you want to do that again at some point?
Yeah, I mean, I raced with him. I raced with him this year at Goodwood as well. Actually, it's always an interesting one. It's good to have a sort of a benevolent teammate, if you like, because some of the time, you're really competitive with your teammates. Not so much in sports car racing. We've done it so much now that it's not really weird anymore. But it's quite a nice thing to do. It's kind of charted my increasing professionalism over the years. They're kind of watermarks in where I've been. When we first drove things together, I'd be a little bit behind him, and then we'd move through, and then I'd be, a bit ahead of him. And now I've kind of, because he's kind of getting a bit older, I'll be, a little bit more ahead of him, although he's still bloody.
He's still quick.
He is really quick. Honestly, he is really, really quick. And so it's nice. I mean, what I always find myself thinking is, imagine how good he was when he was like my age. When he's 60 and he put a lap in Silverstone Classic testing, in an E-type Jag, he put a lap in like 0.7 off. He's like mid 60s, and it's a fast car, and it's sliding around and moving. It's physical, it's tough. And the first time, and it took him about 4 laps to get to that point. And you think, imagine how fast he was when, push came to shove in his earlier career. And that's kind of cool for me to almost extrapolate.
I mean, it going to make you appreciate how competitive all the other drivers were around when he was racing around your age as well. It's just like, if that's how quick he is now, how quick were all of them as well in comparison, and just it's ridiculous.
Yeah, and you watch those, got a couple of sort of onboard cameras footage at home and that kind of thing. You watch some various bits and bobs from various races back, and you just, it takes you through the challenges. I sit there with him, I'm like, why aren't you doing burnouts? Warm your tyres up. He's like, drive shafts will break. Okay, yeah.
Fair enough.
Why have you come into the pits? Battery. We needed to change it after so many laps. It's like, okay, yeah, cool. And it just, you forget the challenges. They used to, not spin the wheels apart from the start, so they didn't smash the drivetrain to pieces before they got the fragility of the cars was amazing. But the competitiveness also, the speed that everyone's at is quite outrageous, considering the risk.
Oh yeah. I mean, you kind of accept it, but then as soon as you stop to think about it for more than 5 seconds, it starts to just boggle a bit.
I mean, yeah, his first Grand Prix podium, we get this right, was he showed me the video the other day, was back in Dallas. And it looks like, an area of airfield. It looks like a bad Sebring, basically. An area of tarmac with some tires on it around a hotel. Yeah. And it's just like, who approved that? You know what I mean? Like, yeah. What? I mean,
concerns about tracks last year was like, in comparison, that's nothing.
This is fine. I'll tell you a story about a racetrack he did in Group C that had a bridge with a pillar of the bridge in the middle of the racetrack to go either side of it. It's just
you just wouldn't get away with that these days at all.
Forget it, man. Well, yeah, exactly. What's that all about? But interesting stuff, and it's always good to share with them.
Yeah, I mean, talking classic car racing as well, you do a lot of that as well. What is it about the classic car racing that you love so much?
I like it because you feel like you can make a difference. I think that, and classic cars these days are kind of how sports cars used to be, where if you jump in a car and you are fast and do a good job, everyone treats you as a professional and with respect, which is lovely. Because unfortunately, it's not always the case in modern racing, because there are so many young men and women now with so much money to spend to try to get them to where they want to be. Yeah. That actually, I always say that team managers in modern racing are a bit like a very attractive girl at a disco. They're just sort of bothered endlessly all night by drivers, and it's like, and there comes a point where they're like, there's just so many of you, go away, to it, right? And actually, whereas the classic side, the cars are still a little bit dangerous. The cars are still a little bit dangerous, and you have to be able to change gear. I mean, as a percentage of race car drivers under 30, or maybe under 35. God, I said under 30 there. I'm 30, 31. A percentage of race car drivers under 35 who can change gear on an H-pattern shifter reliably without breaking gearboxes and buzzing engines and things like that, it's less than 30%. So you're actually taking 2/3 of the marketplace out by putting a stick in the middle of the car, right? Yeah. Then, it's a little bit dangerous. Another 10% won't want to do it because it's dangerous. And so actually you become a valuable commodity again, like drivers were.
Yeah.
Back in the...
That kind of takes it back to that purer time of racing.
Back in the 80s when there was a bloke who, because they mostly were back then, who was prepared to drive it with his legs sticking out the front, could drive it for 2 hours without breaking it, and was fast enough, and was prepared to go around the world, and all of a sudden you've got yourself a career. Whereas in a junior formula these days, when it changes gear like that, it's impossible to break it, and you're probably not going to hurt yourself. You've got yourself a toss-up between a popularity contest and an auction. Yeah. So basically, and that's the situation. And so that's why I love to do it. That's why I love to do it, because you feel like you make the difference. People treat you with respect, and when you get out of the car,
you need the skills and the merit to get there. You can't just, everything else will only get you so far until you actually are in the car and you're doing the stuff yourself. Then the difference is you see it properly then.
Yeah, and when you get out of the car, having delivered the performance in it and not broken it, and everything's good, everything's right, everyone looks at you like, yeah, wow, that was really impressive, well done, because it is right to get kind of thing to the end of the race without messing it up. So That is what I really enjoy about it, and they're just plain cool, aren't they? And they sound great.
Yeah.
They look great. It's it's a world of unashamed consumption, isn't it? Basically, back then, and it's nice to just take a holiday in it.
Yeah.
Basically, before we have to come back and live in real 2022 when, realistically,
it kind of sounds like the blend of perfect stuff, the holiday racing, and you get the satisfaction from knowing that you're making the difference as well. So it's not like it's just a bit of perfect blend there.
Yeah, it's a holiday. It's a holiday in the past, definitely.
Yeah,
definitely. Before I come back to the real world, where efficiency matters and marketing matters and all of those other things, and
there's other fun things.
But that being said, the World Endurance Championship is an incredibly friendly place to race, and the team that I'm with are my kind of guys completely, and my kind of people.
And so I imagine that makes quite a big difference as well in terms of how much you're going to be able to perform and enjoy as well in that scenario. Then
they're just behind you, and they love racing, and they're passionate about it, which is what I love. Which is what I love about those guys. They just want to race as hard as they can. They want to win, and they want to do it with you. They don't want you to do it for them. There's a bit of a
proper team mentality there.
Yeah, there's a 90-degree shift in it, and that's really nice. That's really, really nice. So they're really cool guys and incredibly humble, considering that they own this fabulous motor racing.
For a guarantee, is it? So
yeah. So that's cool.
And so then going back to other Alex Jacques for a second there, because he's obviously more on the commentary side of things. Would we be possible to see a motorsport feature in the future where we see you taking him around the track and putting him through his paces a bit?
So that's an interesting one, and it's one I might do. I'm gonna start making some videos. I think some bits and bobs, some fun stuff.
I think it'd be quite a fun little series, to be honest.
Yeah. I think we might do a bit of an Alex squared sort of teaching day or something. See what we can do. I quite like to take him around the Nürburgring, see how he holds up.
I guess some hits.
But yeah, I mean, I think he'd love it. I mean, he's such a passionate bloke about his motorsport as well, and encyclopedic knowledge. I mean, his knowledge of feeder series and Formula One are terrifying, frankly. And it's all passion. It's all passion. He knows it because he wants. It's not like
you can't get to that level of knowledge without being passionate about it, because otherwise you'd get bored. So
he's not sat down and learnt it like an A level. He
probably knew that instead of the stuff he was meant to know for A level.
Yeah, he really cares how many laps Nelson Piquet did around Reims and whatever, I really care about the cars. I really care about the drivers, and I love watching racing and trying to communicate it. But the historical knowledge and the encyclopedic history of motorsport that he has is just.
So it's great to have him there with you, so that you don't necessarily have to be worrying about that side of things as well too much.
Yeah, and then you'll be explaining how the diff works in a Formula 2 car, and he'll stop and he'll turn and he'll put his mic down and just listen to you like he's never heard anything ever about a racing car ever before, and it's that which is cool about. But I mean, and also a pro communicator. He thinks about that. He thinks about that a lot.
It definitely comes across. I mean, I can't remember the first time I heard him, but I mean, probably F2 or F3. But it may just like it could have been his first day, could have been his 100th day. It just sounds like he's been always doing it. Just
a natural communicator who's then honed that ability in to exactly the audience. He has to hit, and for me, just absolutely nails it. But I know that everybody has their own taste in commentators, but for me, absolutely nails it. So
No,
yeah, top lad.
Couple of fun questions to finish off, then that have absolutely nothing to do with motorsport. Number one, would you rather fight 100 duck-sized horses or a horse-sized duck?
No, a horse-sized duck, because at least you can see. It's all about knowing where your enemy is, isn't it? It's at least because if they swarm, if they swarm around you.
Yeah, just straight away one deal with it, and then at least
deal with it, and then you can neutralize the beak, and you're there.
I think that's probably the most concise answer that I've had so far.
Yeah, I'm decisive. I'm decisive. You're gonna struggle with me on this. Okay, go.
All right, we'll have fun with this one maybe then. The final question: what would be a terrible Tinder profile description you could make for yourself?
Terrible Tinder profile description. I don't know, just all the cliche crap. I don't know, I just people who try and be like, oh, I'm this and that. I don't know.
We get a post.
I'll probably be rubbish at that. I would probably be rubbish at that, but fellow race car drivers have just literally just gone off on one about their basically just put a career CV on there. I think you have to realize I think there's a line at the front of Rush, the movie, where I don't know why women like race car drivers. Mostly they think it's idiotic, and you have to understand that broadly most women who you will think
you've got to remind yourself of that a bit so you don't get carried away.
will think it's a little bit silly. I'm very lucky that my girlfriend doesn't, but in my view, give up on trying to achieve dates. It's a very inaccurate cliche, very inaccurate, and it's also a bad sell, by the way, because I don't know a less available or enjoyable to be around group of blokes with less time to spend with you than a group of race car drivers. They're busy making things out of carbon fiber.
Well, it's been an absolute pleasure chatting with you today. I want to thank you for coming on and wish you best of luck with the 2022 season.
Thanks a lot. See you later.
Thanks again to Alex for coming on to the Kerbs with me, and I want to wish him the best of luck with the 2022 racing season. Join me again soon when I'll be chatting to another famous face from the world of motorsport. In the meantime, don't forget to like, comment and subscribe, and check out the other videos on the On the Kerbs YouTube channel, and listen to me talk about Formula 1 amongst other things over on the Undercut podcast, also on YouTube. Away from YouTube, you can follow me over on Instagram at t.albers.daily.drivetribe. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you again next week for the next episode.